The sound of muffled gasps echoed through the cracked door, shattering the illusion I had clung to for far too long. My heart pounded as I pushed the door open, confronted by the sight that would forever shatter my world. Dean, my husband, entangled with another woman on our marital bed. Avery. Dean's eyes widened in panic as he scrambled to cover his naked form. The disheveled woman beside him mirrored his horror, clutching the sheets to her chest. Nausea churned within me, a tsunami of emotions threatening to drown my senses. Tears burned my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not in front of him, not anymore. "Who is she?" I demanded, my voice trembling with a mixture of rage and anguish. Dean opened his mouth, but the woman beat him to it. I'm so sorry, I didn't know he was married." Her voice quivered with shame. I turned my gaze back to Dean, searching his face for any semblance of remorse or explanation. But all I found was a cold, calculated mask, a facade he had expertly maintained throughout our marriage. "How could you?" The words escaped my lips, laced with a pain that cut deeper than any physical wound. Dean's expression hardened, all traces of guilt evaporating. "This isn't what it looks like, Avery. You need to understand." "Understand what?" I spat, incredulous. "That you've been lying to me since the day we married? That our entire relationship has been a sham?" His eyes narrowed, and for a fleeting moment I caught a glimpse of the true Dean, the one who had been hiding behind his charming smile and empty promises. "You knew what you were getting into," he sneered. "I needed someone to take care of my mother, and you were convenient. Don't act so surprised." His words sliced through me like a dagger, leaving me reeling. Suddenly, everything made sense. The way he had distanced himself, the countless nights he claimed to be working late, the emotional void that had grown between us. I swallowed hard, fighting back the tears that threatened to betray my resolve. In that moment, a newfound strength surged within me, a determination to break free from the chains of this toxic marriage. "You're right, Dean," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. I did know what I was getting into, but I also thought there was a chance for us to build something real, something based on love and trust. Clearly, I was wrong. I turned on my heel, pausing at the doorway. "Don't worry, I'll take care of your mother. It's the least I can do for the woman who deserves far better than a son like you." With those words, I walked away, leaving behind the shattered remnants of a life I had once believed in. But as the door closed behind me, I felt a weight lifted from my shoulders, the weight of a lie I had been living for far too long. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The illusion had crumbled, and it was time to face the harsh reality of my marriage. In the days that followed, I found solace in the company of the one person who needed me most, Meredith. Dean's mother had been the initial reason I accepted his proposal, but over time, she had become more than just a patient to me. Our bond transcended the confines of a caregiver's duty, blossoming into a genuine connection forged by the cruelty of her son's neglect. As I tended to Meredith, her moments of lucidity revealed glimpses into Dean's past that shook me to my core. The man I had once known was nothing but a facade, meticulously constructed to hide his true nature, a selfish, manipulative being who would stop at nothing to secure his own comfort. "He was always a difficult child," Meredith whispered one afternoon, her frail hand clutching mine with surprising strength, so consumed by his own desires, never thinking about the consequences of his actions. I listened intently, my heart aching for the woman who had endured the burden of raising such a callous son. "He's draining my accounts, you know," she continued, her eyes filled with a rare clarity. "Slowly but surely, he's taking everything I've worked so hard for." My blood boiled at the revelation, but before I could respond, Meredith fixed me with a determined gaze. "We have to stop him, Avery. He can't be allowed to get away with this." In that moment, a spark ignited within me, a fierce determination to protect Meredith and ensure that Dean faced the consequences of his actions. We began to devise a plan, a secret pact sealed by the bond we had forged through adversity. As the days turned into weeks, our scheme took shape. I used my medical expertise to gather evidence of Dean's neglect, meticulously documenting every instance of his absence and disregard for his mother's well-being. Meredith, in her moments of clarity, revealed the intricate details of the family's finances, exposing Dean's underhanded dealings and illegal siphoning of funds. "He thinks he's so clever," Meredith would say, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "But we'll show him. We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." And in those moments, I saw a strength in Meredith that I had never witnessed before, a resilience born from years of enduring her son's cruelty. It was a strength that fueled my own resolve, a fire that burned brighter with each passing day. As our plan solidified, I couldn't help but marvel at the irony of our situation. Dean had brought me into his life as a means to an end, a convenient caretaker to ease his burden. But in doing so, he had unwittingly forged a bond that would ultimately lead to his downfall. With Meredith by my side, I felt a sense of purpose I had never known before. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but one thing was certain: we would not rest until Dean faced the consequences of his actions, and karma had its say. Meredith's health had been deteriorating rapidly, her moments of lucidity becoming increasingly scarce. It pained me to witness her decline, but our shared determination burned brighter than ever before. One evening, as I tended to her, Dean barged into the room, his usual air of indifference replaced by an unsettling look of determination. "Mother, we need to talk," he announced, his tone leaving no room for argument. Meredith regarded him with a weary gaze, her once vibrant eyes dulled by the relentless progression of her condition. "What is it, Dean?" she asked, her voice frail yet laced with a hint of defiance. Dean shifted his gaze towards me, his lips curling into a condescending sneer. "Leave us, Avery. This is a family matter." I opened my mouth to protest, but Meredith beat me to it. "Avery stays," she insisted, her grip tightening around my hand. "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her." Dean's nostrils flared, but he seemed to recognize the futility of arguing with his ailing mother. "Very well," he conceded through gritted teeth. "I think it's time we discussed your living arrangements." A chill ran down my spine as the implication of his words sank in. Meredith must have sensed it too, for her expression hardened, her frailty momentarily overshadowed by a steely resolve. "What are you suggesting, Dean?" she demanded, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. "I've found a wonderful nursing home," Dean began, his tone sickly sweet. "A place where you'll receive round-the-clock care without the burden of staying in this house." My heart pounded in my chest as the true nature of his plan became clear. He intended to strip Meredith of her dignity, her independence, and ultimately her assets. "You can't be serious," I blurted out before I could stop myself. "Meredith has made it abundantly clear that she wants to remain in her home, surrounded by her familiar belongings." Dean shot me a withering glare, his false veneer of concern slipping to reveal the cold, calculating man beneath. "This isn't your decision, Avery," he spat. "Meredith is my mother, and I'll do what's best for her." Meredith's grip tightened around my hand, and I could feel her trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. In that moment, our unspoken pact solidified. We would not let Dean strip away her autonomy without a fight. "I'm not going anywhere," Meredith declared, her voice resonating with a strength I had seldom witnessed. "This is my home, and you have no right to take it away from me." Dean's face contorted with rage, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before our eyes. "You ungrateful old woman," he snarled, taking a menacing step forward. Without hesitation, I placed myself between him and Meredith, my body shielding her from his wrath. "That's enough, Dean," I warned, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You've made your intentions clear, and we won't stand for it." A tense silence hung in the air, the weight of our shared defiance palpable. Dean's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenched with barely restrained anger, but in that moment I knew we had struck a blow, a crack in his armor that would ultimately lead to his undoing. As he stormed out of the room, I turned to Meredith, our eyes locking in a silent vow. The stakes had been raised, and there was no turning back. We would see this through to the bitter end, no matter the cost. In the wake of Dean's outburst, a newfound sense of urgency propelled our plan forward. We both knew that his threats were not to be taken lightly, and time was of the essence if we were to secure Meredith's well-being and expose his true nature. I channeled my energy into gathering every shred of evidence that could be used against him. With meticulous care, I documented each instance of neglect, every missed appointment, and every callous remark that had fallen from his lips. Meredith, in her moments of clarity, provided invaluable insights into the family's financial records, revealing the breadcrumbs of Dean's deceit. "He thinks he's being so clever," she would say, her eyes alight with determination. "But we'll show him. We'll make sure everyone knows the truth." As our cache of evidence grew, I found myself seeking the counsel of an old friend from nursing school, Julia, a woman whose unwavering moral compass and sharp legal mind had always been a source of inspiration. "Avery, what you're describing is nothing short of elder abuse and financial exploitation," Julia said, her brow furrowed as she pored over the meticulously compiled documents. "With the right legal representation, we can build an airtight case against him." Her words fueled my determination, and together we began laying the groundwork for a legal battle that would shake the foundations of Dean's carefully constructed facade. Throughout this process, I couldn't help but marvel at Meredith's resilience. Despite her failing health, she remained steadfast in her resolve, her moments of lucidity becoming beacons of hope that guided our efforts. "He's always underestimated me," she confided one evening, her frail hand clasping mine with surprising strength. "But this time, he's gone too far." In those moments, I saw the unwavering bond that had formed between us, a bond forged by shared adversity and a thirst for justice. It was a bond that transcended the boundaries of blood and law, and it was this bond that would ultimately be Dean's undoing. With each passing day, our arsenal grew stronger, bolstered by the unwavering support of Julia and the indomitable spirit of Meredith. Dean, in his arrogance, remained oblivious to our machinations, secure in his belief that he held all the cards. Little did he know that the tables were turning, and the very woman he had sought to exploit, the woman he had dismissed as a mere caretaker, would be the one to unravel the web of lies he had so carefully woven. As the pieces fell into place, a sense of anticipation bubbled within me. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but I knew that with Meredith by my side and the weight of evidence on our side, we would emerge victorious. Dean's reign of cruelty and deceit was drawing to a close, and soon the scales of justice would tip in our favor, delivering the comeuppance he so richly deserved. The tension in the air was palpable as the day of reckoning drew near. Meredith's health had taken a turn for the worse, her moments of lucidity becoming increasingly fleeting. It was a brutal reminder of the urgency that fueled our mission. "We can't wait any longer," Julia said, her voice hushed as she pored over the meticulously compiled evidence. "If we don't act soon, Dean might succeed in his plan to commit Meredith to that nursing home." Her words sent a chill down my spine, solidifying my resolve. We had come too far to let Dean's cruelty triumph. With careful planning and precision, we orchestrated our escape, a final act of defiance against Dean's machinations. Under the guise of a medical emergency, I arranged for a discreet transport to whisk Meredith away to a secure location far from Dean's reach. The night before our departure, I sat by Meredith's bedside, her frail hand clasped in mine. Her eyes, though dulled by the relentless progression of her condition, shone with a fierce determination that belied her fragile state. "We're almost there, Meredith," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "Soon you'll be safe, and Dean will face the consequences of his actions." A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips, her grip tightening ever so slightly around my fingers. "I know, my dear," she rasped, "and when this is all over, we'll finally be free." Her words resonated deep within me, echoing the shared yearning for a future untainted by Dean's cruelty. It was a future that had once seemed like a distant dream, but now it was within our grasp. The following morning, I steeled myself for the final act. As the transport team arrived, I busied myself with the pretense of a medical emergency, meticulously staging the scene to sell our ruse. Dean burst into the room, his face contorted with a mixture of concern and annoyance. "What's going on?" he demanded, his gaze flickering between Meredith's still form and the flurry of activity around her. "Your mother's condition has taken a turn," I said, injecting just the right amount of urgency into my voice. "We need to get her to the hospital immediately." For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of genuine concern in Dean's eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by his ever-present selfishness. "Fine, fine," he muttered, waving us off with a dismissive gesture. "Just make sure she's taken care of." Little did he know that those words would come back to haunt him. As the transport team whisked Meredith away, I couldn't help but steal one last glance at Dean, his oblivious form already retreating into the depths of the house. A sense of triumph coursed through my veins, tempered by the knowledge that the true battle was yet to come. With Meredith safely ensconced in our secure location, I turned my attention to the final piece of our plan, a meticulously crafted letter detailing Dean's transgressions in explicit detail. Copies were dispatched to key relatives and authorities, setting the stage for the reckoning that was to come. As I sealed the last envelope, a sense of finality washed over me. The die had been cast, and there was no turning back. But for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that justice would prevail, and karma would finally catch up to Dean. The calm before the storm had passed, and now the true battle was about to begin. The days following our escape were a whirlwind of activity, as the wheels of justice began to turn. Relatives and authorities, alerted by our meticulously crafted letters, descended upon the situation with a sense of urgency. It was only a matter of time before Dean realized that his carefully constructed world was crumbling around him. True to form, he showed up at our secure location unannounced, his face twisted into a mask of rage. I had been expecting his arrival, and yet the sight of him still sent a chill down my spine. "Where is she?" he snarled, his eyes wild with fury. "Where have you taken my mother?" I met his gaze with a steely resolve, refusing to cower in the face of his wrath. "Meredith is safe," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "Safe from you and your selfish schemes." Dean's nostrils flared, and for a moment I thought he might lunge at me. But then a sickening smirk spread across his face, and he let out a humorless chuckle. "You think you've won, don't you?" he sneered. "You and that doddering old fool plotting against me like some twisted fantasy." I fought back the urge to strike him, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "It's over, Dean," I said through gritted teeth. "We know everything, the financial exploitation, the neglect, the lies. You've lost." His eyes narrowed and he took a menacing step forward. "You'll never prove anything," he spat. "Without my mother's testimony, you have nothing." In that moment, a familiar voice cut through the tension. "I wouldn't be so sure about that, son." Meredith, frail but resolute, emerged from the shadows, her eyes burning with a fierce determination that belied her fragile state. Dean's jaw dropped, his composure crumbling as he took in the sight of his mother, defiant and unwavering in her support of me. "Mother, what are you doing?" he stammered, his arrogance giving way to a flicker of uncertainty. Meredith met his gaze head-on, her voice steady and unwavering. "I'm doing what I should have done years ago, Dean," she said. "I'm putting an end to your cruelty and deceit." Before Dean could respond, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air, signaling the arrival of the authorities. Julia had been true to her word, coordinating a swift and decisive response to our call for justice. Dean's eyes darted around in panic, his carefully cultivated facade crumbling before our eyes. "This is insane," he muttered, his words laced with desperation. "You'll all pay for this." But his threats rang hollow, as the officers burst through the door, their stern expressions leaving no room for negotiation. As they read him his rights and placed him under arrest, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication wash over me. The man who had so callously manipulated and exploited us was finally facing the consequences of his actions. Meredith's hand found mine, her grip surprisingly strong despite her frailty. "It's over," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "We did it." In that moment, the weight of our shared struggle lifted, replaced by a profound sense of relief and triumph. The road ahead was still fraught with challenges, but for the first time in years I felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that justice would prevail and karma would have its say. As Dean was led away in handcuffs, his defiant glare burned into my memory, a stark reminder of the battles yet to come. But I knew, with Meredith by my side, we would face those battles head-on, armed with the strength of our bond and the conviction that righteousness would triumph over cruelty. The confrontation had been won, but the war was just beginning. The days leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of activity as our legal team worked tirelessly to assemble the damning evidence against Dean. The weight of his crimes was staggering. Financial exploitation, elder abuse, and a litany of other offenses that painted a picture of a man consumed by greed and selfishness. As I sat in the courtroom, surrounded by the solemn faces of the jury, I couldn't help but steal a glance at Dean. His once confident demeanor had been replaced by a sullen, hollow expression, a far cry from the arrogant man who had so brazenly exploited his own mother. Meredith, her strength bolstered by the unwavering support of our legal team, took the stand with a grace and determination that belied her frailty. As she recounted the years of neglect and manipulation at the hands of her son, her voice rang out with a clarity that seemed to pierce the very soul of the courtroom. "He was always a difficult child," she said, her gaze unwavering as she locked eyes with Dean. "But I never imagined he would stoop so low as to exploit his own mother's illness for personal gain." Dean's jaw clenched, his eyes narrowing into a defiant glare. But Meredith remained steadfast, her words carrying the weight of a lifetime of pain and disappointment. "I trusted him," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "I trusted him to care for me, to honor the sacrifices I made as a mother. But instead he saw me as a means to an end, a source of wealth and convenience to be exploited." The courtroom fell into a hushed silence, the gravity of Meredith's testimony hanging heavily in the air. Even Dean seemed momentarily subdued, his usual bravado faltering in the face of his mother's searing indictment. As the trial progressed, the weight of the evidence against Dean became insurmountable. Financial records, witness testimonies, and a mountain of documentation painted a damning portrait of a man driven by greed and manipulation. Throughout it all, Dean maintained a veneer of defiance, lashing out at the prosecution and attempting to discredit the testimony against him. But his efforts were futile, his desperate attempts to cling to control only serving to further underscore the depth of his depravity. In the end, the verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. As the judge handed down Dean's sentence, a hush fell over the courtroom. For years he had operated under the delusion that his actions would go unchecked, that he could exploit and manipulate without consequence. But in that moment, the reality of his crimes came crashing down upon him, his facade of entitlement and arrogance stripped away to reveal the pathetic, desperate man beneath. As the bailiffs led him away, his eyes met mine for a fleeting moment, and in that instant, I saw a glimmer of something I had never witnessed before. Fear. Fear of the consequences he had brought upon himself, fear of the reckoning that had finally caught up to him. It was a fear born not only of the legal repercussions, but of the knowledge that his own mother had been the one to deliver the final blow, shattering the illusion of control he had so desperately clung to. In the aftermath of the trial, Meredith and I found solace in the knowledge that justice had been served. The weight of Dean's cruelty had been lifted, and a newfound sense of freedom washed over us. As we embraced, tears of relief streaming down our faces, I couldn't help but marvel at the strength of the bond we had forged, a bond that had withstood the tempest of Dean's manipulation and emerged victorious. "We did it," Meredith whispered, her eyes shining with a clarity I had seldom witnessed. "We showed him that karma always wins in the end." In that moment, I understood the true power of our shared journey, a journey that had transcended the boundaries of family and circumstance, forging an unbreakable bond rooted in love, resilience, and an unwavering belief in the triumph of justice over cruelty. As we looked ahead to the future, unburdened by the specter of Dean's malice, I knew that our bond would endure. A testament to the indomitable spirit that had carried us through the darkest of times, and a beacon of hope for all those who dared to stand against the forces of greed and exploitation. Karma had spoken, and in its wake a new chapter was about to begin. The aftermath of Dean's sentencing was a whirlwind of activity, as Meredith and I set about reclaiming the life that had been so cruelly disrupted by his greed and manipulation. With the legal proceedings behind us, we were finally free to forge a new path, unburdened by the weight of his cruelty. The first order of business was securing Meredith's well-being. Utilizing the assets that had been rightfully restored to her, we spared no expense in ensuring she received the highest quality of care. A team of dedicated professionals was assembled, and a state-of-the-art home health setup was established, complete with around-the-clock nursing and all the amenities necessary to provide Meredith with the comfort and dignity she deserved. As the weeks passed, I witnessed a remarkable transformation in Meredith. The cloud of fear and uncertainty that had once hung over her seemed to lift, replaced by a newfound sense of peace and contentment. Her moments of lucidity became more frequent, and in those precious instances, the true depth of her resilience shone through. "Look at us, Avery," she would say, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. "Who would have thought that we'd come out on the other side of this, stronger than ever?" Her words never failed to fill me with a sense of awe and admiration. This woman, who had endured the unimaginable betrayal of her own son, had emerged from the ashes of that trauma with a grace and fortitude that humbled me to my core. As for Dean, his name became a taboo subject in our household. The mere mention of him carried the weight of 1,000 wounds, a reminder of the pain and suffering he had inflicted upon us. In those rare moments when his specter loomed, Meredith would simply shake her head, a sad smile playing upon her lips. "He made his choices," she would say, her voice tinged with a hint of pity, "and now he has to live with the consequences." It was a sentiment that resonated deeply with me, a testament to the power of karmic justice and the indomitable strength of the human spirit. In the months that followed, our bond only grew stronger, forged in the fires of our shared struggle and tempered by the triumphs we had achieved together. We became more than just caretaker and patient. We were family, bound by a love and respect that transcended blood ties. As Meredith's health stabilized, we began to explore the world beyond the confines of her home, venturing out on small excursions that filled us both with a sense of wonder and freedom. Every outing was a celebration, a reminder of the precious moments we had fought so hard to reclaim. On one such outing, as we strolled through a beautiful park, Meredith paused, her gaze fixed on a family playing nearby. A wistful smile tugged at her lips, and she turned to me, her eyes shining with a depth of emotion that took my breath away. "This is what it's all about, Avery," she said softly. "These moments, these precious flashes of joy and love, that's what makes life worth living." In that instant, I understood the true weight of her words. Our journey had been fraught with pain and heartache, but it had also forged an unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of love and resilience in the face of adversity. As we continued our walk hand in hand, I couldn't help but a sense of profound gratitude wash over me. The road had been long and arduous, but we had emerged victorious, our spirits tempered by the fires of our shared struggle. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united by a bond that could never be broken, a bond forged in the crucible of karma's reckoning and strengthened by the indomitable spirit that had carried us through the darkest of times. The future stretched out before us, a tapestry of endless possibilities, and as we looked ahead, I saw not just a new beginning, but a life filled with hope, love, and the unwavering belief that justice would always prevail over cruelty. For in the end, karma had spoken, and its voice would echo through the ages, a testament to the enduring power of righteousness and the indomitable strength of the human spirit.